going to start it, and I'm going to do this.
And what does that do?
Now I can sync the video to there.
Ah, look at you. So do we have to do that again now?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Hey there, sports fans. We're back. This is Dinner with the Captain. I'm John Dinner, here with Captain Steve Priolo, captain of the National Lacrosse League Buffalo Bandits, the two-time defending champion Buffalo Bandits. Merry Christmas, Steve.
Merry Christmas. Cheers.
Cheers. So this is a little bit of a bonus episode. We've been getting lots of real positive reviews, and so you guys got us excited. So for a couple of guys that it's hard to keep quiet as it is, you guys keep encouraging us. We're going to keep talking, and so it's a bye week. We're heading into Christmas. So this is Christmas with the Captain. Do you have old guy now, veteran of 15 NLL seasons. What's your earliest Christmas memory? Maybe like sort of related, maybe to sport world.
Oh well, man, it was funny. Like when I was a kid, Christmas was always like, what sport am I going to be doing in the next little bit? Right? You either get skates or you get a basketball, or
basketball
you get whatever,
shoes.
right?
Yeah.
You remember when you get a lacrosse stick. You remember when you get other gifts that sort of fade into the past, right? But it's like, yeah, it's funny how lacrosse sort of came to the top, right? And how you end up in lacrosse. It's a long journey to get to where I am, right? Because it's with everybody, right? You're playing every sport growing up, so to be able to choose lacrosse and follow this path is something special.
But it is neat, and you said like the lacrosse stick and the relationship players have with their stick. It's not like a hockey stick that gets replaced 2 or 3 times in a season, right? It's for kids, right? They have their same stick for 3-4 seasons.
Yeah, it's wild. And mesh, man. People a lot of times if they break their stick or their plastic gets all warped or whatever, it's like they'll cut their mesh out and reuse it, right? So it's funny when kids are like, hey, can I have your stick? Can I have your stick? And it's like, I kind of spent like 3 months working this one in and like getting it dialed to where I need it to be, right? Whereas like hockey is, you can just have the replica stick, right? But that's where like I thought the warp was going to bridge that gap. I thought the warp would, especially with kids, it's great, but with adults, it's like having the same pocket every single time. You pick up your stick would have been great. Too bad it's sort of, I don't know, didn't really catch on, I guess.
And so, does the stick, you're a defender, like, is the stick still, like, I think people can, like, conceptually understand, like, Dane and Josh, like, really working their stick and wanting it to do the things that they want it to do. But, like, as a defender, is that still something that's top of mind?
Dude, it's hilarious. Like, D guys' sticks are so warped and bent, and, for me, it's always been, I need to be able to pick up a loose ball, and I need to be able to break that ball out. So any sort of like getting whacked, it should be able to handle 1 or 2 hits. I don't want the ball popping out on easy whacks. And then I need to be able to throw the ball 80 feet. So I just need basically a big pocket the ball's gonna roll out. When you think about the O guys, right, they're so dialed to like how their stick whips. Like whip is like, it's almost like a delay, or allows your stick to like whip forward before it sort of pops out. It's not rolling out of their stick. It's like stays, and then pops out. And then that allows them to, they love their sticks up there, right? Dane sleeps with his stick. He always naps with it, and their sticks are all chromed and nice and beautiful, and they can almost stay more beautiful, right? Where it's like D guys' sticks is, we appreciate our sticks as much as anybody else, with the exception of maybe a few guys that sort of just keep them in their truck and keep them in their bags.
But is it maybe more about the shaft then for the defenders? Or
I don't know, man. Yeah. It's more about just footwork. Like the stick is, I have some sticks that are very special to me, right? I have a lot of sticks. I have a 2015 Woody that I used when I played for Victoria, and it was signed by the whole team we won Man Cup with, right? And it's like, I know it's maybe frowned upon to use a Woody, but that was just sort of what we did.
Was that everybody? Like, did you have like all the D guys were using Woodies?
Like, Rory and myself,
yeah.
Rory Smith. So
just like weapons.
Well, you're going to get called for a lot of slashes, right?
Yeah.
So the moment you pick up a woody, it's all eyes are on you, and you're like, you cannot slash because you will be called for a slash. But what it does is having that like hickory head allows you to sort of get under guys' arms and pry them and pop and poke, and there's no flexing, right? Where when you have a plastic head, every time you get up under someone's arms, it's going to twist and bend. But there's so many cons, right? Loose balls, passing, any sort of stick ball handling just becomes basically impossible. But used it for a couple of games. Then Peterborough went out and their whole team bought wood sticks, and they said, if you guys want to play this game, we're ready to play it, right? And we did for a little bit, and then it just fell back into natural sort of plastic lacrosse. But that stick was sort of cool. Like I was like, man, those sweet, I used that, and so I got the team to sign it, and that's hanging up. So there's special sticks like that. But even that stick from Armor Mesh, the Hoka got me as like a little present. I got it all chromed out and nice, and it was this beautiful stick that I was like, man, I'm gonna treasure this thing forever. Like, this is unreal. And then 2 games in, smack right on Jeff Teet's wrists, and pop. There you go. It's broken. Yeah. Not his wrist, the stick. He was fine.
We're not out to injure anybody.
No. It was not a loose ball. It was just sort of popping the stick. And, yeah.
But maybe back to Christmas. So.
Oh yeah, Christmas.
Yeah, that's right. That's why we're here. I mean, Canadians, there's kind of like there's the hockey sweater, and there's the magic skates and TV shows, and kind of everybody kind of grows up, and you kind of maybe remember your first pair of skates or anything like that. Is there a memory of like sort of the first lacrosse stick or something that was lacrosse related that was under the tree as a young guy? Like, I mean, maybe even going back, like, was your family a lacrosse family before you started playing lacrosse?
No, man. I kind of came on the lacrosse scene late. Like, I'm sure there's 2 sticks that stick out of my mind of my first ones, but I don't remember anything really around Christmas. And I know, it's this time of year, and that's what we're looking to talk about. But it's like, honestly, I have no idea. It's hard to remember back like that. I don't know. Do you remember your Christmases from a kid? Like
a little bit. I mean, actually, I remember an Easter where I got a basketball net, right?
Yeah.
Easter bunny brought me a basketball, and I was pretty jazzed.
No way.
That. Yeah,
it was bunny. I wonder how you even carried it.
It hopped, right? I could jump. But I kind of, I remember getting some skates, like I said, and my boys now, they remember that a couple of years ago they got the hockey net, and we shoot lacrosse balls on it and stuff like that. But even as a lacrosse family, the first net we got wasn't a lacrosse net, right? It was a hockey net, just a little more available or whatever it is. But
that was the same thing with me. Like growing up, I played,
and it's winter.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You're not thinking of your summer sport. It's always hockey sticks, and basketball is a winter sport, believe it or not. And a lot of basketball stuff. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I played hockey, basketball, and lacrosse growing up at decently high levels, and then eventually you sort of have to make a choice, right? And it's like I ended up playing junior hockey, and then I was given a couple scholarship opportunities for basketball, so I went and played university basketball. And still sort of kept lacrosse in my mind, but it was by that point I wasn't playing anymore by about midget. And then my buddies, so like Mike and Brian Adams, the twins, they were playing intermediate at the time, and they were like, hey, you should come out and play intermediate like during the summer. And I was like, okay, what time's tryouts at? And they said, well, first we're going to junior A tryouts. And then I was like, okay, I guess I'll come to those too. And then that's when Eric Vince took me on the team, right? And so Matt Vince's older brother, Eric, and he took me, and I made junior, and then from there it was the lacrosse career.
And so, you had been away from the sport for a while. Does he ever talk about what he saw in you that made him be like, oh, this is a guy we're going to work with and build?
I'd like to think that he saw my athleticism and things like that, but I know.
You are a unicorn, like when you compare yourself to. It can probably be hard to remember because professional athletes are unicorns, right? Like you're talking about the 1%, and even though it's lacrosse, it's the 1% of lacrosse players make it. Being a big guy, I've seen you move on the basketball court. I see you move around campus and kicking a soccer ball or whatever else. You're a very good athlete.
Yeah.
And so. That's simply it was athleticism?
No, it definitely wasn't athleticism.
No?
That's what I like to think it was.
Sure.
It was one defining moment in preseason. There was Brandon Niesink ended up in some sort of tussle or whatever, and his helmet came off, and it wasn't necessarily a fight. And I don't remember who it was, but it was someone, and we were playing Six Nations, and he was like kicking Niesink's helmet around, and I was like, I don't know. I was in great shape, man. I haven't been in a fight or anything really in my life, but I was like, man, that guy's sort of being like a dickhead. Like he's being a bully out there. And I said, Eric, can I go fight this guy? He's like, you want to go fight him? I was like, oh yeah. And then so went out there, beat the wheels off him. I don't remember who it was, but I did really well. And then Eric was like, holy crap, like we should keep this guy on our team. And then that summer I had a couple fights with like Suter and there's another guy from Nation, I don't remember, but there was a couple junior fights, and like that was sort of my entry was he's athletic enough to do what we need him to do on defense, but he's also nails enough to go out there and just fight these guys that are all sort of been pushing people around for the last couple of years. And that was my entry onto that team, and then eventually my entry into the NLL, right? And that's what it was. That was my entry into the NLL. Fighter was, we've talked about this in the pilot, was like, don't want Billy D fighting, so who can we get, right? And that's where I ended up. And from there it was fighting. Game sort of evolves, it starts becoming transition, and then it starts to turn into very skill based, and that's where we are today. Sure.
And so at that time, you're in junior, and you kind of said playing a bunch of different sports. Like, your dad's probably a pretty proud guy, like happy to see I'm playing high level anything, and it makes a sporting family pretty excited. Were they surprised that it was lacrosse?
I don't know, maybe. My dad was a football player.
And did he push you towards that ever? Or?
No, he pushed me away from football.
Yeah,
he pushed me away from football. He said it's just, just try not to play it. But my dad always talks about, like, if he would have known about lacrosse at the time, then he goes, that would have been his sport. He would have loved to play it. My dad comes from like a immigrant family from Italy, and like everybody's family, I guess, prior to us, like no money, no anything, and just sort of grinding it out, right? My dad played soccer, played football, played those, and I never played soccer or football. He always sort of pushed me away, and he pushed me into basketball and hockey and lacrosse, and but I think he would have been a great little lacrosse player, man. He's built like, he's not the tallest guy, but he's like built, and he used to run like cross country and marathons and all that stuff. He used to run to his marathons and then run the marathon. Like, he was one of those guys, and he always tells me, he goes, oh, that's not a true story, but like, it's a true story in my head, so that's what's really important.
Because the stories are that he went uphill both ways to school.
For sure he did.
7 feet of snow.
And for everybody's dad, it's the same way, right? They're superheroes, so it's like, I think he would have done some damage in lacrosse. He would have been pretty good at it.
Yeah. Well, but so growing up in St. Catharines, lacrosse it's got a long history there. It probably even precedes your dad, but even at that time, still pretty small niche sport. It's kind of so do you recall like asking to play lacrosse, or like signed up and this is going to be your summer sport?
Dude, I actually don't even know. Yeah. You're right. That's an interesting memory. I have no idea. It was just, here's a lacrosse stick, let's go try this thing. Like, there must have been something my parents knew, that they must have met somebody that was showing them to go play. I should ask them and say, how did
for
even
me,
end up
the
in
legend of lacrosse is like I had a lot of energy as a young guy, and they were looking to put me into something organized at a very young age. And at 4 years old, the only thing that was happening in Burlington is they had soft lacrosse for 4-year-olds. And and then as a 5-year-old, I was playing tyke lacrosse up a couple of age groups. And then I think that might have been the highlight of my lacrosse career. I sort of plateaued there right around 7, and concentrated on talking about the sports that I played and not really playing them so much. But that's how I got into lacrosse. And my family was not lacrosse family and stuff like that. And I didn't play a high level lacrosse or anything like that. I played some midget and had some junior B stuff, but it was like, I was like, you kind of went into the basketball route, because that just seemed to be the more at that time, like the path to greatness or whatever it was. There's scholarship. They talk about scholarship opportunities. Like in my day, like field lacrosse happened once a year with their box lacrosse team to just go for like get the long stick in our hands, and so we could like slash people from 6 feet away. Like that's awesome.
Yeah,
like, that's
really.
what field lacrosse was to us.
And now look where it's grown, right?
Yeah.
Now look at this. It was PLL and everything. It's really
and going to the Olympics. And
well, dude, the thing is the scholarships to the States. If you have a kid, or especially if you have a daughter, man, like get her into lacrosse, because they're throwing money at this in the States, and you can get your education paid for through lacrosse. And
it's pretty neat.
It's great.
There is a bit of a misnomer up here. You start talking to families that send their kids down our education was paid for, but it's still pretty expensive. But it's again, just opportunities to continue to play a sport that you love, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that it's like it's not for everybody. But for the people that do make it, it can cover your whole thing. But I have a lot of friends that have been, it's the same thing. It would have cost you the same amount to go to school in Canada, and when you come back, you have to get a Canadian education anyway. So
a little bit, but I mean, but maybe that's where we go next year, is sort of the evolution, because I mean, not that I got out of lacrosse, but it wasn't a path for me. Like I wasn't one of the top players. I played with some guys that, like Patty Campbell was a goalie.
No way.
Yeah, he went on. Ryan Flippins, he played some pretty high level stuff.
You played with Pat Campbell?
Yeah, he was my goalie.
Did you ever see the brawl of the preseason between the Bandits and Toronto Rock? That line clear? That's kind of started because of him.
I mean, so one of my earliest memories of my lacrosse career is he would have been a year younger than me, and so because lacrosse is, even still to this day, is still kind of a 2 age group thing, like even as it grows, it's not like a U10, U11, U13 or U12, right? It's kind of every couple of years. So I would play with an older group, and there was me and 2 other guys that kind of were at our age group. And so we'd play with an older group, and we'd kind of sit at the end of the bench, especially as we got older. And then the next year we would be the guys, right?
Yeah.
And, I was a skinny kid, and so I kind of got pushed around a fair bit, and I didn't mind that. Nothing too bad. But I just remember this one time I got tattooed right into the boards, and I just look up, and there's Patty Campbell. He's running down the floor, and his shin pads are just flopping in the wind, and he just steamrolls the guy that was right next to me. And I think that's one of the things that everybody loved about him, right? He was a consummate team guy. And I mean, it's funny because it was years later that I didn't even realize he ended up having an NLL career at all. Just again, kind of losing touch when
toughest guy in the NLL, the backup goalie,
right? But then I played with a guy named Brian Bendig, and he had a bit of a time in the NLL for a bit, but it was certainly never something. But even for those guys, it wasn't something that was really outwardly talked about, right? Even then would talk about hockey or basketball or just not playing sport at all, right? It wasn't really something that, for you, junior, when you got into junior, were you okay, the Bandits are there? Is that front of mind for the lacrosse players at that time? That's what, 17, 18 years ago?
Yeah, it was spending time with friends and staying in shape for basketball, right? The reason I love basketball so much, I think, is because it reminds me of a lot of lacrosse and vice versa. And they're both sort of beautiful sports in that way, where it's a constant chess match, right? How you defend picks and how you move, and the movements on defense are almost the same as the movements on defense in basketball, right? And it's very, very similar in terms of that. So the transition that way was pretty simple. And I think it's translated a lot to the success I've had, especially in the last couple of years, being surrounded by the players I'm surrounded by. It's we can all get on the same page really early, and how you defend. I wish I had a way of showing all this stuff, but I'll try to my best.
One of these days. Again, this podcast is really growing. I think, what is this going to be, episode 5 when it's released here, and it's going to be longer than 23 minutes.
Yeah, Weiser told me to make it longer than 23 minutes, so here we are.
And that's great, because we want to leave the audience wanting more, and that's fantastic. And I think we've sort of landed on 23 minutes, because when we think about it being a weekly podcast, but we'll try to throw these ones in here every once in a while. But that evolution of the sport that you talked about, since that start of your career, you talked, fighting. When was the last time that you had to fight? Had to. You don't have to anymore. No, I know.
There's enough people around me, but it's 2023 or something. I fought Warren Jeffrey, but it's fighting is still a part of it, but it's not. And how the game is reffed and all that is a way that it's changed, but mostly it's changed because there's the way defense has changed the way offense was played made defense play in a certain way, and now the offense has become used to the way defense plays, so they make adjustments, and it keeps going back and forth. When I first started, it was very so if you think about the floor as north-south being net to net, right? That's like north south, and like east west is like board to board sort of thing, like horizontally. It was a very north south game. There'd be the offense would set picks that were like up and down, and then the ball would be swung. So Darius Kilgore came up with this defense that, hey, we're going to double that. So as that pick comes from the bottom up, there's going to be pressure that stays on the ball carrier. So let's say there's a lefty that has the ball. He's going down the lane north-south. And then so there's the man that's covering him stays on him. And as the guy's coming up to set a pick, he would leave his man that was setting the pick and go double the ball. And it would become this north-south sort of trap. His only option really is to flip the ball to the middle to the guy that was setting the pick. And then hopefully the off-ball help slide would be there. And that became known as like, I don't know, there was like an era where it was, this north-south would be setting that double, right? And everything sort of goes off of that defense now, right? Like the defense we run is not with the double, but there's still pressure down from the top. And the bottom guy comes up and he has to make a read, right? He's sort of splitting. He's coming up into that shooting lane, but he's also covering the guy that made the roll. And then off ball is showing help, but not. And so defense is sort of how you get around picks. And I don't know if this is like boring or whatever, too technical, right? But
No, it's great.
In a nutshell, defense is how you get around picks. Like they're trying to get their men open, and we're trying to not let them get open. So when we talk about something called like shooting on a pick, it's going over top. When you talk about something called opening, you're going underneath. So it's basically over top or underneath is how you're going to defend. Once you're in those positions, then you can make reads too. Of are you going to stay on the pressure? Are you going to curl out? Are you going to come down the lane? There's all different reads from there. And this is where you guys have the advantage because, as we've mentioned, you have the oldest defense in the history of the world, right?
Paul
Dawson, 39.
A couple of cavemen back there. But truly, you guys have seen it all, but you guys have also done it together.
Mm-hmm. And that's the big thing. Those microseconds we've talked about before is that you're able to read what somebody else is doing, and that's the big thing. Like when I'm playing. When we think about our right side with Weiser, Spanger, and Dawson, you're sitting there going, I know exactly what these guys are going to do just based on their body position and how they're going to react, right? But then the offense sort of countered that, and now you're seeing a ton of offenses. If you watch closely in the NLL right now, they're not flipping the ball like they used to in the early 2010s and 2015 and whatever. They don't flip it anymore. They curl out and they swing it, right? So as that guy that carries the ball down the lane is curling out, he's surveying the whole floor, which now makes the defense have to make another read. So then we've made that adjustment. And the other thing they're doing now, if you watch our team, we're ridiculous at it. We're with Bucky and Dahoka and Chase and these guys, and they slip. It's these slips, vacates, high vacates, low vacates. The game's played behind the net. The offense. And
when you're saying that's them. That's the creating space.
Yeah, This is finding space.
Sorry.
So Bucky's really good at like finding space. So if he's gonna go set a pick for Dane's man's like, oh my gosh, this guy's gonna come fucking hammer me, and he's gonna try to get Dane open. So Bucky's setting it up like he's gonna come hammer him, and maybe he does 3 or 4 times, and then that last time he's coming in, instead of hammering him, he just slips to the net. So now this guy has been hammered a bunch. He's been hit, pick, and now he opens to get Bucky, and Bucky's not there. He's now slipped to the net. But the guy that was covering Bucky was expecting a switch, so he's switched, and that's how you end up in those doubles, like that clip we saw with Josh and Kluche. Yeah. Josh is sweeping over the top. That guy is staying on Josh. The other guy closed the gap. He ends up with 2 guys on him because Kluche hit the gap. He was able to slide to the net. So hitting the gaps and slips and options like that are becoming the norm, which is putting a lot of pressure on defenses to make reads that are out of our comfort zone. Like it's very difficult to make a judgment call if this guy. So now we're having to be proactive on situations instead of reactive, right? We have to be either switches early or stay with our man. It's difficult. It's tough ball right now, especially with high vacates. So if somebody lines up at the halfway up the boards, and the guy is going to come down and set a down pick, but instead of him setting a down pick, he just cuts right to the net. So now he's vacated, but the guy that has the ball at the half is now swinging over the top. The defense is already in a position where we were forcing to help, and now we're forcing to no one because that guy has now left and our player went with him. So it's evolved like crazy, man. And this is these finding spaces on the ground, these finding space is it's an interesting tactic, and it's going to be fun.
And you talked about in your own evolution as a player and on the team, like you talked about it, and I think you even said a leader is supposed to find like the job that either others can't do or aren't doing, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to fill that space. Mm-hmm. Can you think over the evolution of maybe like when you started, or maybe even going back a little bit further, knowing about some of these guys that now who would thrive? Like, I mean, obviously we got JT and Gate and those guys that did things that would translate over to any era, but maybe there's a guy that like, man, if he had been here 5 more years, the way we're playing now, like tailored to his game.
Well, Stainhouse, person that comes to mind.
Yeah.
That guy was built for the social media era, and he was done before it happened. Like, he was on covers of magazines and doing Reebok commercials and stuff before I even knew that stuff was being promoted. And the way he played, he was so entertaining and so electric. Like, he must be one of the most electric players of all time, Mark Stainhouse. And yeah, I think right now, he was a space creator. He was super athletic, and he a lot like Chase, where he's going to get to where he needs to go. And there's nothing that really the defense can do about it except sort of throw help at it, right, all the time. But Mark was flying through the air, and he had the long hair, and yeah, man, he would have thrived in this sort of. But he never liked it. I don't think he has social media. I don't think he has anything like that. He
just played the game.
Just played the game. He didn't pick it up till he was like 17 too. So.
And so, I mean, is that maybe a bit of an issue? I mean, I think hockey sometimes gets it because everyone's wearing the helmets and the visors and stuff like that. But like lacrosse players, and it's one of the reasons that I came back to the sport of lacrosse. I was very lucky. My boys were interested in it, and I follow your experience, right? Get them into it when they're young, and they fell in love with it. And we were surrounded. Burlington Minor Lacrosse Association, super lucky to have some of these guys that were their coaches at that age. Dan Dawson, Bill Greer, like Sandy Chapman, like it just oozed out of them, like the joy of the sport, but then also how easily they taught it. And then you come up, and for us, we came up to Huntsville, and then here's an organization that's been around for 65, 70 years. Jack Bayonda is like this guy. I mean, and it's just, and we had no idea. That it existed. Like, I mean, I knew Huntsville had a lacrosse team, but being down there, didn't have a sense as to the history of it. Like, is that where sometimes the NLL, like the marketing of our stars, and I mean, again, that's part of the reason that we're trying to do this, right? We're trying to get more ears and eyes onto the sport. Like, but a guy that's like a Steinhaus, that like he's electric and exciting and whatever else, but he does like, he's humble. He's got a second job. Like, he did other things, right? And I know Dane and Josh are trying to do their thing, and we'll always pump their, like the Dane and Josh show is like a great thing. Should we watch it, listen to it weekly right after you've listened to Dinner with the Captain?
In the Back of the Bird with Paul Dawson,
Back of the Bird,
Dan Lomas.
Yeah,
a lot of good pods out there.
Yeah,
they all happen to be on the Bandits right now, but 3 podcasts on one team.
But that's I think also speaks to maybe the success of the organization right now is guys that are like all in on the sport for themselves.
That's a great way of putting it, man.
For themselves and for others.
Yeah, all in on the sport. That's a great way to describe it.
And that's not to say the guys before weren't, but the possibilities maybe didn't seem possible, right? Like,
I think they were in their own way. Now we have the ability to do this. Like, what do we have? A computer, one mixer, a couple mics that we borrowed from the music room. Like, it's, the ability to put this together and put it out is it's almost stupid not to do this. Like, we have these conversations anyways. We have these at a morning assembly, or we have them anyways, right?
And that is the history of where this all started, right? Is, I mean, you and I chit-chatting, I mean, as we were getting to know each other in your other job and my job, And then man, I love talking lacrosse with you.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, well now let's get some mics in front of us and see if anybody else likes listening to it. And it seems to be going fairly well so far. I think we're up to like 75 individuals have listened to it.
It's just Weiser in his truck driving to practice, and when he gets there, he just tells me
he's never going to want to take the train.
Yeah, he gets surprised. He goes, "That's the worst thing I've ever listened to. Can't wait for next week. You should make it longer." I'm like, "Fuck off, Weiser."
But how do we take it? How does the sport grow to the next level? I mean, it's going to the Olympics, so it's going to be front of mind. Like you mentioned 2015, right around the Worlds and stuff like that. There was a real push to, at the the top levels of the game to recognize sort of the indigenous roots of the game. What do you think's next for this sport?
I don't know, man. It's kind of hard to put my finger on it. Like, if I knew, I'm sure. Someone
else would have known before us.
Someone smarter than me would have known.
Because someone told me.
Yeah, but there's like a couple things that come to mind. Again, eyes on the sport, and it's that, and it's getting on TV, and it is. But I feel like the big thing is people not understanding necessarily what's happening out there, and they know it's entertaining, but they're like, what the hell is a penalty, or what is going on, right? And I think that more people comment, like Drew Petkoff is I think he commentates for Georgia, and he's played in the league for years, and he breaks down what happened out there. It's in a way that people can understand it, and I think that's important. We need more people who are talking about the sport that have played it at a high level and really explaining it to everybody what's happening. But it also comes from consistency on the floor. Like, I don't know, I don't want to say anything negative at all, but when I was watching Toronto play against Georgia, I think it was, and Chris Bushi goes into the corner, picks up the loose ball, gets drilled in the head, and his helmet comes off, and then he runs out of the corner and makes a pass, and Bushi gets the penalty for like playing without his helmet, and I'm sitting there going, this has just confused a lot of people that are watching this sport. Like, why is that not just like either a play on, or maybe it should have been a high sticking on whoever hit Bushi in the head? But why is this not just a play on?
Or if that's going to be the call, save the player from himself, and it's a dead ball.
Dead ball. Call it a dead ball, and either give it to Toronto or give it to Georgia or somebody. But don't put somebody in the box. Like, a penalty is so detrimental to a momentum and to a game. Like, there's so much control in this game, right? The way you run plays, like being down a man sucks. Like, being on the man down, I love it because it's fun, but the situation sucks.
Yeah.
Like, they are probably going to score or at least get a really good shot, and you have to make a save. Or, fortunate enough, we have Paul Dawson and Cam Wires back there also making saves. So
the 4 goalie system.
Yeah. Is that all? But it's, like I've always been a huge proponent of more possession calls and less penalty calls. A penalty is such a significant thing, and it sucks to take them. So like to have like a confusing penalty just sort of like messes with people watching the game. I know I was watching it, and then I was like, I don't know what the hell just happened.
And then you go it right back, and sort of more of my experience right now which is with the minor lacrosse and through my boys, and seeing it through the eyes of parents and stuff like that, and them wondering what the heck, why can they do that but they can't do this, right? And the players are coming to it, and then as the players come to it, the parents sort of start to understand. But I had an interesting interaction with a family at a tournament, and they're sitting there and they're watching, and they kind of admit, they're like, the 2 moms turned to me and they're like, this is our first tournament and we don't really understand the game. And they were hearing me kind of chirp because I talk at everything. And it wasn't even I wasn't associated with anybody that was on the floor, but just kind of commentating to whomever would listen. And so they asked some questions, and then so I was answering them, and they kind of started to get it. And then sure enough, one of their boys is right up against the boards and gets absolutely tattooed, and then she's right up against the glass, like, what the hell?
Yeah,
like,
is this allowed?
Right? Like, but it's that emotion, right? That it is elicited when you see someone get crunched that you love and whatever else, and there's no penalty. Like that was within the realm of the sport, and like, I'm not having my boy in that. Like that's too dangerous.
Yeah, that's a big thing. That's a big thing too. But I almost think that almost gets people can understand it more. It's like, okay, it's just a vicious sport. I get it, but it's the weird penalties where. But
that her boy pops right up.
Oh, they're not her. They're made
and
of
has
rubber
a smile on his face and is chasing after the ball, and now mom's in.
Yeah.
Right? Like, she's like, she turns and she's like, I'm so sorry that, like, I didn't mean to get, and I'm like, no, that's great. It's an emotional reaction. It's an emotional sport. And she's like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, she's starting to understand.
Well, and I think, and then also seeing that it's okay.
Yeah.
Right. Like our kids, they're allowed to take bumps and bruises and stuff like that. And I think that's a big part of our society that's kind of missing right now is we don't allow our kids to have bumps and bruises.
Or we don't allow them to fail and get back up.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
like having.
And lacrosse is, I mean, it's basketball, right? With the footwork, but with sticks, right? Like, and getting hit, and it's physical. And I mean, that's why I would put, when you talked a couple episodes ago, Josh Byrne, great athlete. I mean, to me, when you're a lacrosse player playing at that high level and what he can do, like in the conversation for one of the best athletes, like they're obviously, as a soccer player, as a basketball player, or whatever. But like now take those guys and see how they do when they're running into a guy that's 6'5" that's got a stick in his hand and is allowed to use it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Josh does. And then I think as people come to the sport and spend more time to it, like they love it. Right. And, we might even have to have an episode up here about, because we are up in Muskoka right now. We're at Rosso Lake College, enjoying getting ready for a Christmas break, but Huntsville District Minor Lacrosse has been around for ages, as I said, but it was Toronto Rock Country. Right, because it had to be
till I showed up.
Well, now, right, two championships, and Steve Priolo showing up with the cup at the Jack Beyond Arena, and like hosting kids out at Rosso Lake College, and I mean it's now it's Bandit Land North. It
is funny. You see like the young kids that kind of don't know who the Rock were necessarily, the early 2000s and all that, and they were easier to convert than the older kids that are like, I'm a diehard Rock fan. But you've heard me say it a million times up there, right? To all those kids, like, be a lacrosse fan. I don't care who you're cheering for, the Rock, Bandits, Georgia, anybody. Cheer for who you want. Just cheer for lacrosse, right? So I've always had that mentality. But
it's translated. It's really nice because, I mean, we get compliments when we go to tournaments. I mean, Huntsville is still a fledgling spot, right? Our center isn't huge. We're trying to draw from a bunch of different towns.
And they travel to Oakville. They
right.
travel to the track.
Oh, man.
Right?
And you see the dedication that families have put into this sport and stuff like that. And so then when we show up to tournaments, everybody loves Huntsville lacrosse, right? But it's kids are playing it the right way. And it started with messaging from guys like you, right? That are showing up and just being like, just play lacrosse, man. Cheer for Huntsville Hawks. And then everybody else is just... now cheer. Yeah,
we'll figure out the rules and shit as we go along. Just get the stick in your hand. Well, the game is always evolving, so we'll figure that stuff out. And your parents will be okay with you getting hit.
Yeah, and so circling all the way back to Christmas, parents stuff those stockings, get some Swax-laxes into those.
Swax-lax.
Get some sticks into hands, and.
Oh man, I forgot to say who this episode's brought to you by.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, 13th Street Winery.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
There's Tom Whitty on our team. He's his family owns 13th Street Winery, so I told him I'm gonna start plugging his
there you go.
His winery on here until he starts giving us wine. So.
And so. Founded at your local Loblaws, or is it LCBO? Or
it's LCBO, and anywhere in Niagara. I'm gonna go get more wine right now.
There you go. I don't know if we can edit this out, so now you're leaving me all on my own here. No dead air. That's never been a problem with me. All the way back to my CHRW days with 94.7. That's where I got my things started at the University of Western Ontario, thinking that, hey, you know what? I'm going to take all this chitter chat that I do to all my poor friends that have had to listen to me for years and years and years, and make everybody else suffer too. But back to sort of the evolution, and we kind of touched on it. 2015, there seemed to be a conscious decision to sort of celebrate the roots of the sport. Mm-hmm. Do you have a sense as to where that came from?
I don't, but I do know that when Worlds were happening in 2015, being in Onondaga, I think collectively known as the birthplace of lacrosse. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it at least originated around there somewhere.
Right.
And it being back in that land was really important, and I think people were recognizing that this means more than just a sport where we learn community and working together and all these skills. This means more than that to a lot of people in this world, right? So sorry, I'm just messing with my one mic here, but yeah, it was being a part of that world was super cool, because then it changed from the little brother of war, which is what I knew it as growing up, right? The messaging changed where it was.
Who did that messaging come from?
Dude, I have no idea.
Was that like, what do you feel like that was kind of the, like, St. Catherine's minor lacrosse, like that's kind of the teachings that
I think
it was
it's
around?
just insensitivity to understanding what was actually happening.
Right.
This little brother of war being, maybe that it was to not go to war, but also resolve conflict.
But also pretty good training for our warriors.
Pretty good training, right? And I think it evolved from that. It must have come from that, but it evolved to the medicine game, because I think it was more than that. And again, I'm just reiterating what I feel like
Your
I've been taught.
Yeah.
And it being the medicine game means that it can, it's not only a physical medicine, but it's also like running and moving and doing all those things, but it's also the medicine of the spirit and the heart and the mind, and a way to show respect, and a way to respect yourself, and all these different emotions that being a part of a sports team brings up in you, right? So the idea of it being a medicine game really makes the most sense, right? And that messaging was really put out during the Onondaga Worlds, and being down there, man. Oh, Alf Shocks, when he was we went and visited him with the late Alf Shocks, visited him in his stick making home, and being a part of the community down there, and also the Thompson Brothers lacrosse was blowing up at the time. It was doing really well, and it was so great. And I think people started recognizing, I don't know, maybe it comes with the Thompson Brothers blowing up the way they did, and people were like, wow, like this means a lot, more than just the sport, to a lot of people. And maybe
do things like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and
that was happening around that time too.
But I mean,
right?
but is that something that permeates into the dressing rooms, and guys are talking about it a little bit more? Because I mean, what happens in the dressing room? And you guys probably talk politics and whatever, but it doesn't probably get too serious because the focus. But again, when you talk about the roots and the origins of the game, and you play with guys that are like affected directly by some of the awful history that existed in our two countries. Mm-hmm. Does that get talked about, like, as a way to, again, when we talk about medicine, right? I mean, to me, what a great sport. Any sport could say that it's a medicine game, right? Because just going out and playing and being with your buddies and doing whatever is really good for us. But when you talk about the medicine game, mm-hmm. And it being sort of the creator's game and whatever else and the history behind it.
Yeah.
It's not just like, this is the latest fad, and so this is how we're going to stay in shape and be good. Like, this is stuff that, like, historic stuff.
Yeah.
Within that history is tied into the loss of the sport.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
the taking of the sport, right? From them. It's hard I feel like it's very hard for me to understand what playing for something like the creator means, but I can understand what it might mean to somebody. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
It's I know your boys have indigenous heritage, and same with your wife, and so I think it's important for you guys to learn those ways and to teach that, and it's important for me to reiterate the messaging. But in terms of like it gets difficult to understand, but I can understand how difficult it is.
But then we go on the other side of it. We go to a guy like Logan Thompson Lyle.
Lyle.
Talking about him last week, and just how there's just something about the way that he plays the game that draws eyes Like my boys, they don't know. They're just watching the game. Who is that guy? Was that the same guy? Who is that guy? And it's like, oh, so, and then we do a little talk about him, and like, yeah, this guy's a star in the league, and okay, now he's our favorite player. And it's like, well, why? And they don't really know, right? Like, there's just something draws to him, right? And that's something that is that maybe innate understanding of what it means to be the creator's game or the medicine game, and seeing how it helps the community and his growth, and maybe in his own life, but how it's permeated out to the community around him. And
I think,
like, does a guy like Tehoka talk about it in the dressing room?
not as much, but you see, like, he has his braid and he has his culture, but Tehoka's so cool and so swaggy and everything already.
Well,
How
right,
could you not follow that guy?
Yeah, right. But
like,
and it's like, and maybe that's unfair. Like, is it fair that should fall onto those guys to be promoting it in that way, right? Like, these are guys that I just want to play the sport that I love.
Yeah, maybe I think it's both. It's Tehoka promotes the sport as much as anybody in this world, right? Like, the guy is one of the biggest advocates for, playing the game, and playing the Six Nations this summer. There's a lot of guys like, man, Cody Jamieson. He's been playing for how long, right? And he's just spectacular. And I think with the Thompsons, it's like they had the Nike deal, and they had the SBs, and they got pumped a lot. Like, they were very promoted, but they earned that too. They play with passion, but that's not to say other people don't play with passion, right? And I don't know.
But there's some real magic there, and if you guys get a chance to watch while Lyle's still playing, I think that, like, it's kind of like what they talk, like the smell test or the eyeball test or whatever. You kind of see it, and there's just something about the way he moves and the way he can play the game that it's quite natural. And
I think that's Lyle. Like, that's just how good Lyle is. Right?
I mean, you can see it when you watch Josh or you watch Dane. Like, with Dane and how fast his hands are. Like, I mean, it's a marvel.
But with Lyle specifically, more than anybody else in this league, I feel is like, well, maybe not. That's probably an unfair statement. But with Lyle specifically,
it's just you and I listening to this,
and Weiser,
especially,
and hopefully 13th Street Winery. But with Lyle, what gets me is he does those little things. Like, he is a superstar, and he does those little things where he wants to be on every ball team. He wants to, if it was up to him, he'd be on the man down. He would play defense. He would play offense. He would play everything, right? And I get that feeling from Josh and Dane as well. But I still think it's like rare in our sport to see guys that are that talented and score goals like he does and see the game like he does, and to have him also play with the passion where I don't care if my ankle is broken, tape it up, put me back out there. I don't care if I'm bleeding. I don't care if I can't see. I don't care if my nose is cut. Put glue on it, put me back out there. Like, nothing's going to stop me from playing. And that's what gets me really excited about Lyle. There's a crazy, like, when we were at Worlds, we were watching Haudenosaunee versus USA, and Lyle was having a little bit of ankle trouble through the summer, and then he rolls it hard in that game, and he like couldn't put pressure on it going off the floor, and everyone's like, "Whoa, Lyle's done for the tournament." And I said, "You guys must not know Lyle, because like, he's gonna be done for about 5 minutes until they can put that tape on. He'll be right back out there. It doesn't matter if it's broken or anything." And lo and behold, there he was 5 minutes later out there playing, barely a hobble. Like, he just but
doing
matter.
Something, right? His game did change after that a bit, and he became a bit more of a distributor and whatever else.
But they also had him out the back door.
He's a 100 guy, right?
Dude, but they played him out the back door.
Yeah,
he was playing defense.
Yeah,
and they would make him run up and play offense. So his offense, you only got the tired version of Lyle on offense.
Yeah,
if you make him go play D first and then offense, and put him at the O door, make him transition back, and sometimes he can if he can get off, he can get off, right? Like, they had Lyle and Zed playing defense, and. Yeah. That's a testament to the firepower they had with the Haudenosaunee.
Well, and also a testament to these guys being like such
as good a shape they're in.
Well, and such just all around world class players.
Yeah.
That, I mean, yeah, we'd love to have you up front because you're going to be the best guys, but the opportunity to have you guys here and there, we can't.
And that's also a little bit of like a knock on certain guys. It's like, well, we can't put you on defense, so the only option for you is offense, right? So it's like, who can we put on defense? And you're sitting there going like, man, we have to put Zed and Lyle on D. It's a tough decision to make.
You would have loved that playing Colorado in those first two finals.
Wouldn't have minded that. That's what I was talking about with Vino the other day. I was like, man, back to the Dobie scoring 8 goals thing, where I was like, man, Vino goes, how many goals do you think he would have scored before we shut him off? I said, well, Zed scored 2 on you, and we just decided to sell the farm to make sure he didn't sweep over the top, because every time he swept over the top, he was putting it in.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah. He's like, at 2, we went and did that. And he goes, that was a lot. Man, that was
so. I mean, was that a miss? I mean, not trying to get away from it. This is our Christmas special, and we're just here telling stories. But like, was that a big miss? Now that you've kind of had a couple days to think about it, was that a big miss by Albany?
Well, for sure it was a big miss, but I don't know what I'm not in the change room. I don't know what they were speaking about, but
I mean, even just watching it, like, could you see, like, God, like, he should be coming off, and that guy should just be on him.
Well, they just kept, rotating onto King and Cook, and you're sitting there going, well, Dobie found space again. Dobie found space. Oh, he actually scored 9. When you watch back, he scored 9. He had 1 called back.
And I think we even got it wrong. It was 7 in the third,
and then the OT,
or the fourth, and then the OT winner.
Yeah.
Which almost is another game, it seems like, but it's like, guys, you can't
anyone but him,
right?
He's too hot right now. Like, make him put his stick in his bag and let it crust up for a bit, and maybe he won't be hot next week. But this week he's hot. Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot of goals, man. Zach Mans had a bunch of goals too. He had like 6 goals in the game. I think it was only like 4 in a row or 3 in a row. But that's our sport, man. We're so in control of the ball that we can do spectacular things with it. When you look at hockey, it's a lot of like dump and chase and go get on it, and it's a game. I find it's a game of mistakes. Hockey's a game of mistakes where
you're capitalizing.
I'm capitalizing on somebody fucking up. Yeah. And in lacrosse, it's like same with basketball, where I'm gonna run something that they don't see coming, and we're gonna get a good shot or a goal or a basket or whatever it is, and now it's up to them to make an adjustment. But in that moment, there's a lot of times there's nothing you can do about it, right?
Yeah, once he's going to the hoop, it's gone, right?
You can play perfect defense, and you go, oh, they got us. We have to adjust,
right? It's like Klutch going one-on-one with the goalie. I mean, we'll take that all day after the Buffalo Bandits, and they got to figure out a way to.
They got to figure out a way to make that not happen. Yeah, it's nuts, man. There's so much control. It's a beautiful sport.
It really is, and it's so much fun to watch. And I really do hope that. I mean, I know I've got some friends that are listening to this, which I really appreciate. And they're not big lacrosse guys, and they're not. Their kids aren't necessarily into the sport the way my boys are.
Holy moly, 52 minutes.
All right, we'll wrap it up right around an hour here, and this will be our Christmas special.
Just for
I got
you,
8 more minutes in me. You got 8 more minutes in you?
Man, I got 8 hours in me.
Yeah, it's pretty great, and we're going to continue. We're going to try to do week to week, but we do have a couple of weeks off here. We're going to be headed into the home opener for the Bandits. You were talking about distractions and just trying to get it over with, and there I am texting you, being like, "Hey, I need 7 more people to be put on the list to come on downstairs," and you're so gracious with that, and I appreciate it. And I mean, again, it's another big part of why we love the sport so much is you have been gracious, but all the guys on the Bandits, we've done some things with the Rock. They've done really great things for minor lacrosse. They've got OLA nights, and they bring people in to carry the flag and do high fives with the players and do some shoot arounds beforehand. I mean, it really is still very much a community sport with access to the stars of the game, right? When you talk about like summer camps being run out of the track, and you got Challen Rogers and you got Rosie doing their thing, and they're bringing in, I mean, one of the guys like that I'm quite familiar with. I mean, he's standing there at a Jeff Teat event, and he's got Jeff Teat firing shots at him, and he's 11 years old, right? And
amazing.
Like what an experience to have that kind of thing. And I know it exists in other sports, but it feels just
not
a little,
to this level, man.
It feels a little further off, only simply because there's more players right now in basketball, and there's more players playing hockey, and so it can feel a little bit small. But we want to grow the game because it really is important. I think not just for the health of our individuals, but I think for the health of our society, because of the kind of game that it is, because we haven't taken contact out of it at such a young age. Mm-hmm. These kids learn at a young age how to take a hit, even when they're not even knowing how to take a hit. By the time they get to 15 and maybe they're outmatched by 60 pounds or they are winning by 60 pounds, they know how to control their bodies in a way that unfortunately, when you see hockey players and they get to 15 years old and now there's body contact, you've got the little guys kind of taking, I'm going to maybe go play basketball now, which is great. Like they're still playing a sport, but they're not playing maybe the sport they love because all the way through it was a different game. And the game doesn't change. The game changes at U11 when the introduction of the shot clock. Right, and I'm even a proponent of, hey, let's have the shot clock at a younger age, maybe a little bit longer. But the introduction of the shot clock gets the kids running more, right? And involve, you now have to involve more players. Whereas the U9 age group and even smaller, 1 or 2 kids can control the game and win the game for you. Whereas that's a lot harder when you got to run up and run back down, and the shot clock goes off. And we can keep winning the ball, but if we're not hitting the net, it's not our ball anymore.
Yeah.
Right, and so. I forget where I'm getting on.
Hey, and that was 8 minutes, everybody.
and here's why we try to keep it to 23 minutes each week.
Here's why we don't drink every time.
But we do want to keep it to 23 minutes, again, because we want it to be action-packed. We want it to be fast-paced. We want you to sort of join us each week to know what's going on in the NLL, and to and go along with like the ups and downs of the season. But with our last few minutes here, home opener that takes you into the new year, and everybody starts talking about 2025. But you talked about 6-game segments, and so we'll kind of be at halfway through the first segment of 6 games.
Mm-hmm. 2 bye weeks.
2 bye weeks.
Insane.
Are you like?
Dude, we practiced last night. Today's Thursday. We practiced on Wednesday. We don't practice again until next Friday, so I can't do math, but that seems like
it's quite
8-9 days.
Yep.
Right, so it's like, I don't know, man. 9 days off with no lacrosse in the beginning of the season, with Christmas in there.
So how do you stay sharp in those 9 days? I mean, shoveling snow can only do so much.
I don't know, man. I just do the same stuff I do all the time. Like it's. I'm a lean guy. The big thing for me is cardio and strength / power movements. Stay light and stay powerful and try to
stay light. 6'6", 230.
No, 223.
Yeah, that's the fighting weight these days.
I don't know, something like that. I don't know, but it's we'll be fine.
Yeah,
just gotta stay out of the alcohol. Well, not today, but stay out of the alcohol. Stay out of the the sweets and stuff, and try to get back at it. But it's just,
what were the guys in Buffalo doing? Like, are they running some Christmas camps or anything like that happening?
I have no idea. I know Beast Lacrosse has started up with Josh and Dane. They're doing Beast Lacrosse. I'm seeing a lot of promotion for that, and so that
and
must be like Buffalo? A winter league. Yeah, they got a nice little facility down there. Man, it's just like, it just sucks. Like I'm gonna miss the guys.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not gonna see them again before Christmas. Christmas is right around the corner, and we're in the full swing of things where they are as close to me as my family is. Yep. So you miss each other, and these bye weeks are tough. But we're already planning all sorts of things. We go to San Diego soon, and Connor Farrell just bought a place in Ireland, so we're wondering if we can figure out a way on one of our bye weeks to get out to Ireland as a group.
You do have one more bye week, right?
Like, I think
it's kind of 3.
We have one on the 4th. Like, we have the Jan 4th bye week, but there's like there's something else that it's, I don't know if it's then, but I don't know. You might see us in Ireland soon.
That would be pretty great.
Cheers, buddy.
Do we get to do the podcast in Ireland? You somehow get me on the team flight?
Oh my God, dude.
All right, so
could you imagine if we make it to Ireland?
But so I don't even know where we're going anymore. We got we'll go 2 minutes. So we're gonna wrap this up, or we're gonna stretch this out for the last 2 minutes.
No one's listening by this time, anyways. Let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up.
Pour a little more wine, though.
You get
just a tiny bit. Brought to you by 13th Street Winery.
There you go.
We're not even drinking their wine. We're drinking Primitivo.
All right. So what's the captain want for Christmas?
I'm gonna go to my property with my wife and my dog, and we're gonna just be in isolation. It's gonna be amazing. I bought a giant cast iron pan, a 17-inch cast iron pan, and we're gonna cook on the fire and go hike out into the bush and just live sort of out there for a bit and be in. There's no power. There's no no noise, no Wi-Fi, no anything. Just it's the most quiet place I can ever think of, and you know, we're gonna go be there. And there's also no light pollution. It's right by Torrance Barrens dark sky reserve, so there's no light. Stars hopefully come out one of the nights, and just be quiet.
It's pretty magical.
Can't
You're going to
wait.
need some quiet after this, right?
Oh,
60 minutes of listening to me jabber on.
cheers, buddy.
Hey, cheers. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
We'll catch you guys in the new year. I don't think we're going to get a pod in before the home opener, but we'll definitely get one afterwards. And if we squeeze one in, you guys will be the first one to know.
We'll squeeze it in. We always do.
All right. Well, thank you, sports fans. This has been Christmas with the Captain, a 60-minute special on life, leadership, and lots of lacrosse. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.